G'day folks, welcome back for another episode, and today we've got a cracker. We're going to be, I had an idea of doing a bunch of different ones, but LKAB's mineral resource today, I ended up doing a deep dive into it and decided that this is where all my attention has to go today. So basically what has happened is LKAB, or LKAB if you're Swedish, has come out today and announced. So these guys are a state-owned massive iron ore mining operation up in the north of Sweden. They produce about 80% of all of the iron ore for Europe, basically. So these guys have come out and announced a massive increase of 43% of their mineral resource for 2023 compared to 2022. Also saying that their Talga deposit in Kiruna now is nearing 1 billion tonnes of total mineral resources, with 1.7 million tonnes of in situ rare earth element oxides, establishing it as Europe's largest rare earth element deposit. Now, when I hear numbers like this, where huge ore bodies have an almost 50% increase in resource in a single year, with no word of actual grade decreases, while still maintaining basically maximum mining capacity, I'll start to get a little bit suspicious and wonder basically what's going on behind the scenes here. Because the absolute fastest and easiest way to jack your resource up massively is basically just drop the cutoff grade. And unfortunately, that's exactly what LKAB has done today. So if we jump straight into their announcement, here we can see key changes. So this is the 2023 mineral resource compared to the 2022. The big one that just jumps out, cutoff grade of all projects. The mineralization has been constrained within a 15% iron cutoff grade. Mineralization shell. Previously, a 40% cutoff grade was used. 40% down to 15. So that's an over 60% decrease in your cutoff grade. So it's basically the equivalent of a gold miner having a cutoff grade of 1.5 1 year, and then all of a sudden saying, let's drop it down to 0.6 grams per ton. It's a absolutely massive change. So obviously their resource is going to just go through the roof if you drop your cutoff grade right down. So you need to take this with a grain of salt. And I think there's a lot of geopolitical issues going on behind the scenes as to why they want to show that they've just got so much resource. So I don't definitely, this isn't bad geology. This isn't bad modelers. This is nothing to do with that. This is probably coming from upstream and getting pushed down to make this thing big at all costs, even if the grade drops down. So the other thing is, this is in an environment where iron ore prices are actually dropping. So if I just jump back into here, and we jump over to the iron ore price for this year, this is the start of the year, sitting at around 140. At the moment, we're at 110. So things are not going well for the iron ore price, and yet they're dropping cutoff grades. This is normally when you're increasing cutoff grades. So it is a bit of a strange situation that is going on at the moment. So basically, as a overall description of LKAB, over the last couple of years, they've put a lot of money and resources into exploration, which has secured a bunch of new large-scale assets for the company. And LKAB's announcement today is partly about the Talga deposit in Kiruna, which is where that massive rare earths announcement came out last year. However, they don't have any production at that deposit yet. And it's also partially about some more ore being found at their Kiruna and Gällivare deposits. So mineral resources now amount to a massive 4.6 billion tonnes, like I said, 43% higher than 2022. And the company says this increase is due to successful exploration and a modernisation of the company's geological modelling. So they've changed the modelling tactics in Leapfrog from a vein-style modelling tool to an intrusion-based modelling tool. And this might mean nothing to you, but basically a vein-style modelling tool, you use much finer parameters to define where that ore body is, whereas an intrusion tool is designed around intrusions, big granites or just intrusive ore bodies in general. And they generally are larger and bulkier and less constrained. So they've changed their entire modelling style over as well. And they're even using different software. So a lot of changes have happened in the resource estimation space for LKAB in the last year. So the biggest increase was in their Pergaya deposit. So they had 63% can be put towards that. And their Malmberget, which is where 49% of the increase came from. So, and they also wanted to say that LKAB's total mineral resources are now more than twice as large as what the company has so far mined during its history. Now, the problem I have with this massive increase for the Pergaya deposit is this. If we jump into here, so this is again the latest resource update. Resource contribution inclusive of reserves. Now we see Kiruna here sitting up with 60.4% average grade. And we see Gruvberget sitting at 52.2%. So they are economic grades. They're really high grades, actually, especially 60%. Whereas Pergaya is sitting down at 46% across both its hematite and magnetite and mixed. So it's basically an average of all of those. So the fact that this is where the majority of the resource increase came from, and it's also one of the lowest grades. It's kind of adding tons without adding grade is what's happened between this 2022 and 2023 resource updates. So it's also important to know that, so the Pergaya deposit does contain rare earth elements, so it does have a supplementary, even though it's got a lower iron oxide grade, it's got that supplementary money coming from the rare earth elements. However, the rare earth element average grade at the moment is sitting at 0.18%, which is way below economical viability. And also there has been no cutoff grade applied to the rare earth elements in Pergaya deposit. So it's basically anywhere there is rare earth elements, it has been included, even if it's 0.01%. So I thought I'd dip into the finances of LKAB as well, how they went last year as opposed to the year before, because they've had this massive resource increase, but how did they go financially as well? So the company's year-end financial report, which came out in February, illustrated a couple of notable developments. Basically, in the last quarter, so Q4 last year, their sales surged to almost 10.8 billion Swedish krona, with operating profit reaching 3.8 billion. And this upturn in the last quarter was primarily driven by increased iron ore prices, where it spiked at the end of last year, and higher delivery volumes and higher pellet sales just for the Q4 quarter. As prices went up, they wanted to really get as much out as they could. However, the overall performance for the entire of 2023 as a whole was weaker compared to the preceding year. Net sales for 2023 amounted to 43 billion, with operating profits sitting at 16 billion. So this is maintaining an operating margin close to 40%, which is pretty good. It basically just means that the cost of doing business is 40% of all of the sales. So they're making 60% profit. Operating profit was mainly impacted by escalated costs due to extended maintenance, planned maintenance and shutdowns, and rising expenses due to inflation. Furthermore, pellet premiums and delivery volumes were lower for the entire year. However, they were somewhat compensated by a weaker Swedish krona. And this may seem counterintuitive. However, a strong currency is not necessarily a good thing for a nation's best interests, basically. So a weaker domestic currency makes a nation's exports more competitive in global markets. And simultaneously, it makes them imports more expensive. So a lower Swedish krona is basically a good thing for LKAB in this regard. Production for 2023 totaled 26.2 million tonnes. However, they were only able to ship out 25.3 million tonnes, mainly due to some raw material scarcities, an early year production disruptions, and a capacity constraints on the ore line. Now, furthermore, is huge news that came out. In December, a derailment of the train line occurred near the Norwegian border, and it disrupted ore transportation and halted all traffic along a 15-kilometre stretch. The interruption basically persisted for over 2 months into 2024. So while December deliveries for Narvik, so it goes from Kiruna to Narvik in Norway, remained unaffected, a much more substantial impact is probably going to be felt in Q1 this year because of that derailment. And furthermore, the board basically suggested that at the annual general meeting that the dividends should equal about half of the annual profit, which comes to about 7.6 billion. Now, like I said, I was going to talk about a couple of other companies. Kuniko had full year accounts come out. Talga has recently signed a recycling JDA. Euro Battery Minerals have had a bit of news. Terraframe have had a bit of news. Beowulf and its wholly owned subsidiary Jokkmokk Iron Ore has announced an exploration update, basically where they've done some boulder sampling southwest of their Kallak deposits, which are also in that kind of Kiruna region, and they've got some good grades coming from those. However, I'll leave it there for today because LKAB was just it was an interesting one today, and it is an awesome deposit. It's got really high grades. It's just I don't see a reason why you would drop your cutoff grade from 40% to 15% without any substantive reasoning behind it, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the future with these guys. So just as a disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research before investing into anything. I'm just a geo and I'm giving you my personal opinions on what I'm reading. So apart from that, happy Easter, everybody. Have a good one.